When Thomas finished his journey, he was very late. He was worried that Sir Topham Hatt might be cross with him. "I warned Thomas," puffed Percy to James. "He's been late one time too many. He'll be in trouble now."
Hello and welcome back to a guide to classic Thomas. But this time I'm not going over a season of Thomas, but I'm taking a look at its sister series, Tugs. This series was created by Thomas director David Mitton and released in 1989, in between seasons 2 and 3 of Thomas. Many of the Thomas crew came over to help with this series, including the composers Mike and Junior. Many others were introduced with this series and were brought over to Thomas Season 3, as this show unfortunately was cancelled after just one season. Beyond just the crew being so similar, the style is much the same with anthropomorphized vehicles whose mouths don't move because it's all done with models. And just like Thomas, a lot of model work was put into Tugs. Another connection was that a lot of the Tugs models were brought over into Season 3, so there's a connected production history. One other difference was that Tugs used voice actors rather than a single narrator, so there aren't different dubs that I'll be comparing in this video, but I'm very happy to look over this series. The characters were good and distinct from the main Thomas character lineup. The stories were pretty fun and in a lot of ways took a step up from what you would normally see in a kid's show. Many have called this series darker than Thomas. I wouldn't go so far as to say this series is dark, but it's dark for a kid's show. And its usual subject matter, talking about contracts and money and salvage, isn't exactly something a little kid would understand. The general plots of the episodes are something silly or amusing enough you could see kids getting into them, and not much is dumbed down for kids. So like Thomas, there's plenty to get into for older fans. Well, after so much talking, let me finally get into the first episode, Sunshine. But if you got bored, you probably skipped ahead, as just like before, I have the timestamps for each episode's review down in the description. Sunshine. The very first episode with the introduction of the Starfleet, the new recruit Sunshine, the rival team Z-Stacks, and multiple other concepts. We get a good sample of how these characters work off of each other and how their jobs operate under Captain Star. It may go over kids' heads, but Captain Star arranged a contract with a ship, the Duchess, to have the Star Tugs be the ones to tow her into port. Captain Zero of the other team plays dirty and has his tugs work to sabotage the Starfleet so the Duchess would switch to the Z-Stacks for when she has to leave. Sunshine, the trial tug for the team, is being introduced, and when helping with the Duchess, Zoran, the number 1 of the Z-Stacks, pushes him into the back, which causes big trouble, and Zoran pretends to help them. Sunshine is left feeling ashamed. He tries to run away, and when Tensence learns what really happened, he and the others go and apologize to Sunshine, who is officially welcomed to the Starfleet. A couple other notes. Zip is purposefully played like an idiot villain, which is such a cliche in kids' entertainment. I'm glad they gave him a real personality later. Also, this particular moment, when Warrior remembers that he forgot Izzy, reminds me of something.
Suffering stacks. Izzy, I completely forgot.
"Percy, I've just remembered. Your mail train is still back at the siding, isn't it?" Percy hurried back to fetch it.
Even the music sounds similar. Unlike Thomas, I didn't watch this series as a kid, so I don't have any hesitancy to rank it like anything else. So I'd give this starter episode a 6 out of 10, which is okay. The plot of a newbie screwing up, trying to run away, but it turns out he didn't, so everyone wants him back, is really basic for kids' entertainment and below the standards of what Tugs' stories are usually like. I still give it a pass because it is a decent introduction to the characters and I like the model work, especially the fog effects. Pirate. Here we get the introduction to a few more essentials of Tugs, like the charming character Grampus. The story of this one starts off similar to the last one, with Tensence being accused of doing his job poorly, but I excuse the cliche this time as they don't focus on it for very long and allow the much more fun plot. The story was from David Mitton, and you can tell, so much the better. Starting with a mysterious pirate and tense music. I like the premise of both the Starfleet and Z-Stacks teaming up for an undercover investigation with some pretty smart traps. Then it turns out the pirate Sea Rogue is just fulfilling a ransom to save his uncle from being killed by 2 tugs with green lights for eyes. Fairly spooky stuff for kids. The antics of the Z-Stacks getting themselves scared by the villains while Grampus rescued the old man, and Tencent, Sunshine, and Sea Rogue all trap the greenlit Tugs is intense and fairly adventurous. There are a couple funny moments as well. I say this episode is an 8 out of 10, with it being a much better story, spookier, and more action-packed. And just more fun. A solid improvement. Trapped. This episode isn't as serious as the last one, and is much funnier. Zoran and Zug get a barge wedged on the sides of a river, blocking the way. That alone is a pretty amusing setup. Interestingly, the water level on one side becomes very shallow, and on the other it starts building up. With Zoran thinking trapping them will remove the Starfleet entirely, the antics, and especially the funny pyromaniac Billy Shoepack, this episode takes a simple premise and just makes it as fun as possible. The problem is solved with a bang as Zoran is trapped, and the silly music just adds to it. Since I watched the first 2 episodes in their 20-minute version, the pacing of this one made this episode feel a little bit more like a breeze. All in all, I give it an 8 out of 10. It's plenty of fun and a definite classic. Regatta. Here we have an episode that, like Whistles and Sneezes of Thomas, I would call a double episode, and it has quite a lot written into it. The plot moves from Lily Lightship to the Regatta Festival to Grampus and the Navy, and it's all tied together with a couple subplots. It starts off with a pretty intense and crazy scene that might have been David Mitten's inspiration for this moment in Cranky Bugs. Lily Lightship is hit by a strange barge that comes out of nowhere, crashes and sinks without a word, and she being damaged is slowly sinking too. Then Grampus comes in to rescue her, plugging the hole until help comes. It shows how good of a character Grampus is, risking his own head to save her. While Lily is under repair, she hopes she'll stay long enough to see the Regatta, the festival, later that night. Then we meet the Navy tug Bluenose, who tells us Grampus is about to be retired by the Navy, which means they blow him up for target practice. Jeez. With the whole Starfleet wanting to help save Grampus, they literally head into the line of fire to place a decoy. I'd be scared to do that. But it all pays off, and in time for the festival, as Lily Lightship gets to be a part of it, and Grampus is bought by the Starfleet. A great conclusion to a great episode. I'd give this one a 9 out of 10, as it has a lot of those scary Mitten moments, really good character moments, and a tightly written story that packs a lot in. Even a funny subplot about Warrior and the garbage dump. And some other funny moments like Grampus spitting in Bluenose's face and Hercules intimidating Zoran. Munitions. Now this episode is just amazing. The first part of it dealing more with the naval tug Bluenose, who this time we see is a real jerk. Super obsessed with giving orders, being first in front of everyone, and is extremely stubborn, always needing to push others around. He's so stubborn and stupid he'd rather smash barges than accept any orders but his own. He's a real annoyance, and everyone from the Starfleet to the Z-Stacks knows it. It is fun watching him because you get so angry you want to go in and slap him on the face. Keeps you hooked in that way. Hercules is familiar with him and knows to brush him off, sticking it to him. Bluenose even pushes the fire tug around and calls him Red Thing. But when Bluenose's absolutely moronic obsession with being first literally blows up in his face, the second part of this episode is explosions galore. It's so crazy and so awesome. Everything about this part of the episode is great. The night setting makes the explosions look better, the music is perfectly tense and action-packed, the fire tug coming in to help with the emergency, the explosions reach the big Mickey crane which falls over, possibly killing him depending on which cut of the episode you watch. The fire almost catches up with a steam train just before it ignites the oil barge that will blow up like a huge bomb, so Tencent needs to manually push it out to sea. The practical and real explosion effects are fantastic. This segment of the episode is so astounding, I think I'd better stop describing it so you can watch it yourself. The episode's ending is really satisfying, with Tencent being saved and Bluenose getting what he so deserves. I give this one a 10 out of 10, as it's my personal favorite. I think it's a prime example of what people mean when they say Tugs is dark for a kid's show. It's so action-packed and a great fun episode, character-wise as well. To me, there isn't a better episode of Tugs. Warrior. Now here's an episode I don't know if others like as much as I do, but I think it's really great. The story is that the Tugs are tearing down old buildings and running rock back and forth for a new foundation. Would that be the yard that burned down in Munitions? I don't know. The episode is mostly character-oriented around Warrior, of course, who is helping with the rock barges but is rather clumsy. He keeps bumping his own barge. Of course, the Zed stacks are there to mock him, and he gets in trouble with some of the other Starfleet, bumping cranes and sinking Big Mac's barge. He still keeps working hard, as he is a strong tug. Then the plot thickens when the lazy tramp steamer Izzy,
not even for 10 gringo,
comes in without a tow, which is illegal and dangerous since he doesn't see where he's going. He crashes into the rock foundation, causing him to begin capsizing. Tencent immediately gets on trying to push Izzy upright, but he's too small. This third act is really intense. Since Zip and Zug are ignoring Tencent for long enough so it will qualify as their salvage, he is the only tug pushing. Two cranes keep snapping ropes when they try and help. Tencent is about to die, and when Warrior comes to help, he tries telling him to let him go. But Warrior shows how good and strong he is and almost pushes Izzy up himself. Then all together, with Tencent's Warrior, Big Mac, the cranes, and Lord Stinker being pushed by Top Hat, they rescue Izzy. It's a really suspenseful sequence and a grand moment for Warrior. Perfectly topped out by the funniest ending of Warrior falling asleep and bumping into an old man tramper. With this episode being a really good one for Warrior's character and having another great action segment, I give it a 9 out of 10. Warrior may be clumsy, but he isn't an idiot. Even though his voice reminds me of Alec Baldwin's voice for Gordon, I'm not bothered by this. His whole personality has a charm to it. He's as hardworking as the rest of the fleet, and both this episode and last episode show he truly is a hero. High Tide. This episode, like last one, is character-centered. This time on the stuck-up one of the Starfleet, Top Hat. The episode starts off like a usual day with him, making fun of someone else in the team, and Captain Star properly shoving it back at him with garbage duty. The larger premise of the episode is that the tides are at record highs, and this is making things a little more difficult for the Starfleet and Zed stacks alike. Warrior and Big Mac even have a race against Zebedee and Zack, who try taking a shortcut, not knowing that the high tide means the bridge steel structure they have won't fit under the bridge, and they'll have to come all the way back. And since the canal isn't too wide, they come to a standoff with Top Hat. Not seeing what they're doing, they smash the steel into the bridge where trains pass overhead. Then Top Hat realizes they're in trouble since the mail train is passing through. So acting quickly, he pulls the steel all the way under the bridge to prop it up. The music when the train approaches is so intense. They have no way to alert the train as to what's happening, and we only hope it holds. And it does. But the pressure from the train downwards sinks the barge the steel is on, and both it and the bridge collapse, just as another goods train is headed towards them, and it will fall into the canal. With some more quick thinking, Top Hat pushes Lord Stinker under the bridge, and the train settles safely into it. With the day saved, we get a funny moment where Tencent and Sunshine think they had the toughest day cleaning up a yard. With this being a Top Hat-centric episode and doing a good job with him, this episode, in my opinion, gets a 9 out of 10. It's another episode with great action moments and a really good focus on a character. Top Hat is snooty and rude, but he is good-hearted and works as much as any of the others. He showed when push comes to shove, he knows what to do. It wasn't an episode with the egotistical character learning not to be so proud, but I don't mind since they didn't need that to show us how great Top Hat is. It would have been really cliché, and like anyone who has experience, Top Hat will learn in time. He already changed his mind about Lord Stinker, so I think this was a very good episode for him. Quarantine. When I first went through and watched the Tugs episodes, this was the only one I didn't like. It centers on a plot of whether an anthropomorphized vehicle should be scrapped, specifically OJ. But I've seen that plot done so many times before in Thomas, with Edward, Toby, Trevor, Donald and Douglas, Oliver and Toad, Stepney, Scruffy, the Spiteful Breakvan, Scarloey, Duke, Smudger, Godred, Hero, Glenn, Cranky, and so forth. This episode doesn't add anything special to that plot, so it didn't feel super original to me. The plot here is about a heat wave that's messing with OJ's engine, and according to Captain Star, causing tempers to be short, though other than Top Hat, nobody minds. So I imagine he said that because he acts like a jerk throughout this episode.
That's made us late, Sunshine.
It's not our fault though, is it? I mean, all those...
6:30's briefing time.
Sorry, Captain. We've been at the water docks.
You know the scrapyard dealers are looking for useless tugs, don't you? Now, next time you're late, I'll ask them what they'll offer for a couple of switchers, understand?
Compare it to the ending of Sunshine.
A few days ago, we salvaged the tugboat Sunshine, and he was taken to Lucky's yard, and I'm glad to tell you that little damage was done. As for the Starfleet, we've learned a valuable lesson here.
Yes,
A lesson
indeed we
about
have.
trust and friendship. I think we have 10 cents to thank for that. And for the rest of us, about jumping to conclusions before knowing the truth. Now, I know you're all proud of being Star Tugs, but the most important thing in my fleet, after hard work, is that my tugs always be true, honest, and forgiving.
What a contrast. And the worst of it all is he is considering scrapping OJ. In a world where vehicles are alive, I don't think it's ethical to replace them. But the difference between this and Thomas is the father figure leader of the vehicles who you look up to shouldn't be the one wanting to do it. It damages respect for Captain Star. He almost has OJ, one of his own tugs, who's clearly loyal, hardworking, and wise, killed. But onto some things I like from this story. The theme for the, quote by Captain Star, evil scrap tugs. The accident where OJ's barge sinks the Fulton Ferry, which I think has the only underwater shot this show did, and it's also pretty cool. There's a quick plot with quarantined ships. Sunshine, 10 Cents, and OJ all keep an eye on Zoran, who suspects the ship might be safe and tries to get the job. 10 Cents runs after him and OJ stops him. So Zoran gets bad luck and 40 days stuck in quarantine. And upon hearing OJ stop 10 Cents from being impetuous, Captain Star decides to order a new engine for OJ. Seriously, you were going to have him scrapped? If you can get past the problems with Captain Star, this is an okay episode that I'll give a 5 out of 10, but it's still not one I can get behind though. Ghosts. This episode was absolutely perfect for me to rewatch in the dark in the middle of the night. The whole Tug show is a precursor to the awesome action-packed Season 5 of Thomas. And this episode is the precursor to the scary ones, like Duncan Gets Spooked and Haunted Henry, and I love it. The story starts you right in with what's going on. Fog. Heavy, thick fog. Turning a typical night for the Tugs creepy, where everything starts making little noises. For Big Mac, it gets even worse, as he had been listening to Scuttlebutt Pete's ghost stories, and is now trying to find his way home alone. When he sees these white tugs that are running completely silent, and knows these can only be the haunting ghost tugs from the crash of 1912. And much of the episode is the other tugs encountering them. Like Haunted Henry, they only have a very small portion back in the daytime because they know they mustn't break the atmosphere, which is brilliantly set up. Not only do the fog effects over dark water look amazing, but a lot of the cinematography is great too. Often this episode uses these very slow-moving shots, letting you look around the set and see where you are. The music is very ominous and quiet. In particular, I like the opera sound when the ghosts go by.
Crooks! Who are they? I don't believe. Yes, I do. It's what Big Mac saw. The ghost fleet. It's a ghost fleet.
You even hear a heartbeat letting you know this tension isn't letting up. The narration by Captain Star is also very nicely done, as the actor can do a good mysterious voice, but the narrator speaks much more in this one, telling the episode more as an intense ghost story.
It was too much for Big Mac. Forgetting safety, he charged into the fog and made his way through the dark shapes of moored boats and trampers, trying to make sure the ghost tugs weren't following him.
It all just works really well. There's a couple amusing moments like Warrior accidentally crashing some shrimpers, Zoran and Izzy being so frightened by the ghosts they want to stick together, and the episode goes the absolute craziest at the end with 10 Cents and Sunshine. They not only see the ghosts, but hear strange noises, and then a ship rises from the water to then explode in lights, lightning, and the head of an old king in the clouds. Had I seen this as a little kid, I would have been really freaked out by it. This probably pushed the boundaries of how scary you could be in a little kid's show. The visuals are going absolutely crazy and you have no idea what's going on. It's like the tunnel scene in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. only with 15 minutes of atmosphere already building up. Tencent is very visibly scared by this, and the music both during and after is perfect. Everyone the next day is scared, even Top Hat. But then the good old Hercules comes in to tell everyone what actually happened, and that there was an explanation for it all. However, he couldn't explain all the crazy stuff both Tencent and Sunshine saw. So I like the narrator still leaving behind one element of mystery. Did the fog drive them crazy? I give this episode a 9 out of 10. It fits right in with the spooky episodes of Thomas Season 5 being rather dark for a kids show. It has just as much atmosphere, brilliant design, and music, a completely trippy climax, and it's a lot of fun to have one of these episodes for the Tugs. I love it. Jinxed. Known as one of the classics of Tugs. A simple but very fun story about an abandoned Tug Boomer, who has a nice pleasant theme. He was originally called Captain Harry, but after getting his new name was Jinxed. Everything that can go wrong around him does go wrong. Tencent and Sunshine at first are skeptical because superstition is something usually disproven in kid shows, like the ghosts from last episode. Things that never go wrong begin to happen though, like Tencent losing his rope and Captain Star's megaphone falling out of the building. Soon it becomes pretty clear that the jinx is real. Boomer is known for a long time and doesn't even want anyone to bother with him anymore. That's rather bold for a kid show, isn't it? He is literally suicidal, and is disappointed when he sinks on top of a barge that saves him. More and more and more antics happen, from the crane being jammed to Boomer's engine smoking. He joins the Z-Stacks for a time, but a munitions barge he's pulling blows up behind him. Captain Zero throws him out and Captain Star takes him. But he finds his patience begins to run very thin too. He keeps running into lots of things malfunctioning or breaking or strange accidents happening around Boomer. He's a lot more trouble than he's worth. Eventually Sunshine figures out that Tencent's horn seems to trigger Boomer's jinx. So he tries to stop honking around him so he'll do better. But it can't stop forever, as when Boomer is given a job to take a sailing ship where he can't break or bust anything, he gets struck by lightning. Of course! It all comes to a happy ending when Boomer is refitted into a houseboat and his jinx is gone. The episode is quite a lot of fun, with some very goofy antics. Boomer is a fun character, and it's just so funny seeing how hard they try and keep his job safe, but he still fails. It's a really good episode of Tugs that is admittedly a simpler, less action-filled story. Some might call this one of the best and give it a 10 out of 10, but it's not quite at the top of my list. Not that I see anything wrong with it, it's just there's some episodes I like better. But I do still really like it, so I give it an 8 out of 10 for a nice fun time. High Winds. Returning to the character-centered episodes, we get one focused on a Z-Stack this time, Zebedee, the number 2 of the Zero Fleet. It shows us a pretty atypical day for him. There's a lot of high wind blowing through the big city port, making things very difficult for everyone. And the best part of the episode is seeing Zebedee's good side. After Tencent helps him with a barge he almost loses, Zebedee concedes he needs help. Then he returns the favor later when Tencent and Sunshine need help controlling a crane. But he doesn't want to be seen helping the Star Tugs. In addition, a crook ship named Johnny Cuba, who Zebedee has a past with, comes into port, and threatening Zebedee, he has him hide him and steal a coal barge. If he tells, he might get into trouble with Captain Zero for his affiliation with Cuba and helping the Stars. So the episode is pulling on him from both ends, Johnny Cuba trying to drag him into his nefarious past, and the Star Tugs trying to bring out his good side. He helps a Coast Guard ship who figures out what's going on with Cuba. So he's stuck between a rock, a hard place, and another hard place. The big moment of this episode is when the Star Fleet is towing a huge ship, the Princess Alice. But the wind is blowing so hard, Tencent, Sunshine, and OJ are about to be crushed and killed. Then Zebedee comes in, being just enough to push the ship back and save the fleet. With the whole Starfleet aware of him helping, they give him thanks. It's a super good moment. And Zebedee even does it knowing Zoran is watching, and he had just berated him for helping the Star Tugs before. This whole story has shown him having a tough day with hard jobs and a guilty conscience. So he's trying to do a bit of good. Then the episode comes to a satisfying conclusion when Hercules catches him with Johnny Cuba. Having heard from the Coast Guard who he is going to arrest him. Then as Johnny tries to get away, Zebedee decides he is tired of being threatened by him and heroically jams him in place. And the ending of the episode is a really nice moment, with 10 Cents giving Zebedee the offer if he ever left the Zed Stacks, he could join the Starfleet. Zebedee turns him down, but if that ever did happen several years later, I think Zebedee would do it. Knowing all their characters, it would happen in the future. He's still a Zed Stack, but he's one we sympathize with now. I give this episode a 9 out of 10 for a great character episode with a lot of good moments. Upriver. We hear a lot in the show about stuff and places that are upriver, so this is an episode where we finally get to be there. We start off at a lake which is north of Uptown, which is north of the big city port. And we meet the big villain of this episode, Logs, a dangerous force in the Tugs world. Really, you get them too close together, they could catch fire, you spread them too far apart and they could catch the current, causing the whole jam to flow out of control. And 3 of the Tugs have to work on managing a bunch of them. Sunshine is soon encircled by some and they have to race against time before he is burned by the fire. Then who comes along but Billy Shoepack? How fitting, since this episode is essentially a combination of Trapped with some of the other action-packed moments like Warrior. Billy blows up the stack of logs enough to get Sunshine out, but it sets the whole mess of logs into motion. They're heading downstream, and they're so powerful they can crush and apparently explode things too. They're clearly exaggerated from real logs, but they are intimidating enough. The steam engine Puffa is sent down the line to outrun the mass, and just in time he warns Uptown. They set the alarm while Top Hat, OJ, and Warrior try to create a block. With Warrior accidentally getting trapped on the other side, he's nearly killed. Forcing the logs into a building, they somehow blow up. But it works out since that building was going to be demolished anyway. This whole episode feels like a very creative one with some great adventurous moments that I like in Tugs. So I give it a 9 out of 10, which I have been giving to a lot of episodes, but that's because Tugs is a fantastic show. This episode feels like a good blend of new places, new ideas, and adventure. As I said before, it's a remix of Trapped, and a really good one. Bigg Freeze. The series finale, which takes place during a harsh and frozen winter. Everything is foggy and cold. Big City Port is towing in the SS Vienna that night, but Little Lightship needs fuel, and supplies being hard to find, 10 Cents ends up bickering with Zoran over a fuel barge, since the Zed Stacks want to be the ones to fuel the ship. So 10 Cents and Sunshine head up to grab a light barge, but Zip and Zug, being jerks, block them in because they think they're going to try beating Zoran, ignoring that if Vienna doesn't come into port, which she won't unless she sees a light, the Zed Stacks lose too. They have to wait until high tide to get out, right before the ship gets in, so they might miss it. Luckily, Warrior buys them just enough time by setting his garbage barge on fire. Since Zip and Zug were being idiots and even Zoran knows it, he sends them back to deal with the fire barge they jammed, rightfully getting in trouble from the fire tug. This story, like the first episode, is a little more basic, but it's better than the first episode. They do involve a lot of characters here, including Hercules and Lily, have a good karma resolution for the villains, they get creative with Warrior setting his barge on fire, and the whole foggy, frozen look of the episode is really good. I give it a 7 out of 10. Not the best, but a satisfying conclusion. Especially at the very end with a song singing away Tugs. I'll miss it. It's a real shame that the show didn't make a second season because there is nothing like this series. The closest really is the sister series Thomas. Being a Thomas fan and liking this show too isn't that uncommon anymore. And there's a lot about it that draws different interests from different fans. One reason I've heard some love this show is due to its mysterious production history. That being, since the show started and stopped so quickly, a record of what was going on behind the scenes was scarce. I confess, I don't think I know too much about Tugs' history, so if you were looking for something deep into that in my video, I can only give you a few things I do know. One thing I know is that probably much more material was shot than what made it into the show. When editing the first episode, Sunshine, they were going to make it 30 minutes long, but they realized that would be too long for kids, so they kept editing it down until the episodes that made it onto TV were 15 minutes long. However, Some months before the show aired, 2 VHS tapes were released with the episodes Sunshine, Pirate, Regatta, and Munitions. On those tapes were 20-minute versions of the episodes with a different intro. So for those 4 episodes, we have both 20 and 15-minute versions, with slight differences. But since neither is an unfinished cut, most just prefer the 20-minute versions. I didn't know about that for a while. Another thing I know is obviously several models came over from Tugs to Thomas, such as the Big Mickey Crane, the Fulton Fairy, Izzy with his face and hat removed, OJ, the Vienna, and a few others. It makes an interesting connection to see Tugs models in the background, or foreground. For more production history, I also know that Tugs was planned for another season of 13 episodes, with 96 scripts written in advance, but due to TVS going bankrupt, Tugs had to be cancelled. It's a real shame. More than any other lost media, like the Down the Mine pilot, the Missing Coach, or the Magic Railroad Director's Cut, I would have loved to have seen a Tugs Season 2. In fact, there's a good question. Were those 96 scripts preserved and or discovered by anyone in the fandom? That's all the production history I know. And other than my script question, I'm not really interested in finding out every secret behind the show, but it is neat to know. Something I am interested in is a Tugs timeline. Did these episodes take place in a different order than what they were shown? Obviously, Sunshine is the first, but there are some other clues that I wonder may point to a different order. But I'm interested if someone else has done this using other clues I didn't spot. Somebody in the comments tell me if a timeline of the episodes has been pieced together by someone. To wrap up my thoughts, Tugs was a really good show with crazy fun stories and great characters. Like Thomas, it has good stories that aren't dumbed down for kids, and using actual models gives this 1920s world they create a lot of charm. All of the characters in this show have distinct personalities, they're all likable. None of them are stupid aside from Zip, but only in the first episode. And what a lot remember from the show is that it was pushing the boundaries of what kids shows could accept. A really interesting question was once asked about Tugs. Who is it made for? Its look and style of anthropomorphized vehicles would seem like it's for kids, just like Thomas, but considering how its stories can be dark and the plots are written a little farther than what kids can understand with contracts and fees and so forth, it seems like its direct audience isn't little kids. Tugs was made for fans of Thomas. Thomas' stories were written by the Reverend W. Awdry in such a way so that it doesn't just entertain the kid you're reading the book to, but the poor soul that has to sit there and read this to them over and over. It's a story that is meant for both young and old to enjoy, whereas Tugs seems like it's going more for the older. Everyone who knows Tugs knew Thomas first, so it's for older Thomas fans. Do I think that's a problem for Tugs having a limited audience? Well, no. Just because its primary audience was older Thomas fans doesn't mean others can't enjoy it. Little kids might be scared by munitions or ghosts, but I think you could show the rest to them. They might not understand what's going on, but they could like it fine. Plus, Sunshine is the exception. I think that one was made for little kids. Not toddlers, but young kids. And even though most of the show was made for older Thomas fans, I think an adult could get into it on its own with no trouble. Yes, it may be a darker companion piece to Thomas, but that doesn't mean the only avenue to watch it is Thomas. Like Avatar: The Legend of Korra was the darker companion piece to Last Airbender, it doesn't mean the only way to watch it is to have seen The Last Airbender when you were a kid. It's just if someone is interested. I would say to an adult who wasn't a Thomas fan who may be interested, if you can watch anthropomorphized stuff with an 80s feel to it, and are interested in the show's slightly dark disposition, give it a try. I don't think it'll disappoint you. Tugs was a fantastic show that deserves to be remembered as much as the classic series of Thomas. It's a real shame it was cancelled. My next Guide to Classic Thomas video will return to Thomas Season 3. Tugs certainly had an effect on Thomas, with a lot of the models and crew being carried over. I also noticed that the aesthetic of Tugs looks halfway in between the dirty industrial Season 2 and the glossy, colorful Season 3. Since production had increased, now they could go back to Thomas and with more money adapt more Railway series stories. And Tugs continued to have an impact even after the next season of Thomas. At its core, Tugs is a passion project of David Minton, with a lot of dark and action-packed stories, and we love it. Once they were done adapting from the Railway series, Thomas adopted that same feeling for its 5th season, going perhaps even darker than Tugs did. We'll talk about that sometime. And next, I'll see you again for Season 3. Thank you all for watching.